Hey everyone, James Lynch here. I wanted to do a quick video on the UFC TV deal because something I didn't realize, and credit to Twitter user here, Robert Joyner, who's someone that's very much on the pulse of the business side of the UFC, says, just a reminder that the exclusive negotiating window between the UFC and ESPN ends on April 15th, so things should be heating up pretty soon with the UFC likely wanting to spend over multiple partners and platforms. Suitors will be coming in hot and heavy. So today's April 5th. We got 10 days. We're going to be finding out what's going on with the UFC very shortly in terms of their TV deal. I feel like this is something that's not being reported that much. And there's a couple other things I want to tie into this video, but there's a good discussion here between a couple different people on Twitter that are, again, very much in the know. So Fight Opinion, who's been covering the sport forever, since long before I started covering it, he goes, I put the over-under for the total package of the UFC new media rights at $850 million. They could hit the over, but the more interesting part is if ESPN can keep any of it. And again, we know that live sports, it's definitely changing. We're seeing a lot of things happening when it comes to how people are consuming sports. A lot of stuff are getting, stuff off their phone. A lot of people are not watching a lot of live sports anymore. A lot of people are just watching highlights. So it's a very interesting time that the UFC is having this negotiating period with the UFC and ESPN. So it's something to keep in mind. And Fight Oracle, another guy who's very much well connected with I shouldn't say well connected, but he knows the business side of things very well. He goes, I'd be surprised if ESPN keeps the package. Mark Shapiro, obviously the TKO head of the UFC, basically so obviously there's Dana White and there's Shapiro as well as part of that TKO group. He says he's publicly calling out their pricing of pay-per-views was very telling. You don't just do that to your single largest partner. Well over half annual revenue is from ESPN, and he just called them out, basically saying they're screwing over fans and causing pay-per-view sales to nocitive since COVID. ESPN Plus is not a growth platform, stalled at 25 million subscribers. I don't think ESPN suffers without UFC. Does the UFC think their brand suffers without ESPN coverage? That's a concern, but I don't think they're happy being there. Ari might already have a deal it's Ari Shapiro, not Mark Shapiro. Mark Shapiro's I think he's the president of the Blue Jays. I don't know why I got my Shapiros mixed up here, but it says, and Ari already might have a deal with Netflix done unofficially. So yeah, there's a lot of options, right? There's Prime, there's Netflix. Like back when they were doing their deal the first time, these weren't like viable options, I think, at the time, really, when it came to sports. We know Netflix now in bed with WWE. That could certainly be an option as well for the UFC. I think the UFC is dead set on having their pay-per-views still as something that you have to pay for. I don't think that's going to go away. So this is where things kind of come together. And again, I want to point out, I'm not an expert when it comes to the numbers or the negotiations when it comes to the TV deal, but these are people that I do follow in terms of what's going on in the business side of things. And it could be interesting here. This could really change how we're watching the UFC in terms of what TV deal they go with. I kind of agree with them here, just from everything I've been reading, that I think it's not going to be one singular company. Like right now they're with ESPN. I could see them going with maybe Netflix and something else and just sort of packaging it. You're seeing this in other sports. And hockey, for example, we have in Canada, we have Sportsnet and Amazon Prime and TSN. So it's multiple partners that are involved. I think the UFC is going to do whatever deal is best for them. I don't think they're at a point where they're needing to find a suitor. I think the UFC is a unique product and it's worldwide, and it's something that they're going to certainly kind of look at all offers here and something, see what works best, basically. So I think that's kind of where things are going to go. But again, we're 10 days away. The UFC still has events booked and are figuring things out. So they must have an idea of which way they're going. But keep an eye out maybe over the next 2 weeks of where the UFC ends up there. Now, something that caught my eye yesterday that ties into this, MMA Guru had a tweet yesterday where he was talking about, kind of the ESPN's coverage of MMA. And he goes, starting to think me beating ESPN's MMA department on a monthly ad revenue generated isn't even accomplished anymore. These numbers are pitiful. ESPN must adjust or I will consume them. Actually, on that thought, I hope they don't adjust. And he was just talking about how, 639 views on a Josh Emmett, Lerone Murphy. And granted, the card this weekend isn't that strong, or the card today, I should say, is not that strong. But he's right. This is something I talked about in other videos, that you have these content creators now who are getting a ton of viewership, a ton of audience. And, you have companies like ESPN and, I mentioned this with Ariel's company on Crown, they're spending a lot of money, but you're seeing the viewership not necessarily beating out these content creators who have way less overhead, right? You look at your gurus, Jesse on Fire, these names where they're getting these, really big audiences, but they're not paying a ton in overhead. And in fact, they're working for themselves. ESPN's a huge company. I actually took a quick browse at ESPN's kind of YouTube coverage. It's okay. I mean, some stuff's doing well. Like you look at the Chandler Pimblett interviews. But yeah, that preview he referenced 18 hours ago, 7.3K views. You know, for an average channel, that's a good amount of views. They have 2 million subscribers, and you're only getting 7,000 views on a preview. And I know, again, this is not the strongest card out there, but it is something worth keeping an eye on. Like, I wonder if that's another thing they're factoring in, is that the UFC might think like, hey, we don't need good coverage. Because let's be honest here. I haven't seen ESPN do a whole lot in terms of, you know, driving the news cycle. You've got Chael Sonnen and Daniel Cormier's show, which continues to get pretty good numbers overall. You've got some, you know, good journalists here. Christian, who does obviously the Lepsky, who does all the Spanish stuff. He gets really good interviews. But like, I haven't seen Brett Okamoto in like forever. You know, they have him on here, but I can't even remember the last interview that Brett Okamoto did that like drove the news or anything. He's kind of been put on the back burner. I've heard some rumblings about him having a rift with the UFC. Or there was something that I think him and Dana got into it last year, but you barely ever see Brett Okamoto doing any sort of MMA stuff now. Obviously, Ariel left. They did hire Andreas Hale as well, sort of on the written side of things, but like, you guys tell me in the comments. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Like, I haven't really seen anything notable from ESPN over the last little bit. Like, the odd time you'll get a quote from DC and the bad guy that you know, you'll see in the news cycle. But really, I see, you know, other people's interviews that are sort of driving the news right now. So this could be factored into the TV deal, is that, you know, maybe when they signed with ESPN, obviously it was like, okay, mainstream platform. It's certainly an upgrade from Fox, right? When they signed the TV deal, that was certainly something that was true. But I think part of it as well was, look, we're getting this really good coverage as well, because at the time Ariel was there, and I know the UFC doesn't like Ariel, but Ariel's still very popular. You have Brett. They had Mark Raimondi at the time. Remember, Mark Raimondi left as well too. He's now covering the NFL. So you've got Brett. You've got, I know Ian Parker does some betting stuff there too. But I just don't think it's really driving the needle. And I don't think it's even necessarily that ESPN doesn't have strong coverage. I think it's just the way people are consuming content now just isn't the way that people want to see. It's not the traditional media route of like, you know, you have to watch ESPN to get your coverage. I think people are going elsewhere, like the YouTubers and some of these other people. So again, I think this could all factor in here. And this is going to be a big story because, like I said, everyone, I know a lot of you out there, you watch every single UFC card. You know, it's going to impact how we're watching our events. So I just hope things go down in price. I don't think they will, but you know, here in Canada, we have everything on Sportsnet, and that's not going to change. This is only for Americans, really, the TV deal in terms of, you know, how you're going to buy pay-per-views, how you're going to watch all the content. This is really for you guys. For us, it doesn't matter. We're locked in Canada. We're locked in with Sportsnet, and nothing's going to change there at all. Like, it's, you know, we can still buy the pay-per-views through Sportsnet or through Fight Pass. That's typically how I do it. But yeah, for you guys out there, I know you pay for ESPN Plus. We don't even have that in Canada. So you can't even watch any of the UFC stuff on ESPN Plus. So all these complaints that I hear about ESPN Plus having, you know, not being very good technically and all these different things, it's irrelevant to me because I've never had to use it. So hopefully for you guys, it ends up being something great. But yeah, I mean, I think I speak for a lot of fans. I don't like paying for the pay-per-views. I wish there was a way that they could bundle everything in like a yearly package and you get like a discount on watching the pay-per-views, because they're like $80 like every pay-per-view. That's too much, especially in this day and age when people are used to having things a little bit cheaper. You know, you look at your Netflix and other subscription services, they're not costing that much on a yearly basis. So but it's the UFC does business the way they want to do it, and they are dead set on the pay-per-views. So you could possibly see them putting pay-per-views on Netflix that you have to pay extra for. So that's something to keep in mind. So yeah, just wanted to have a quick discussion about this because I think this will be a big story over the next 2 weeks and wanted to get ahead of it. And I think it's worth you know, having a discussion about it. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. A couple things. First thing, where do you think the UFC is going to end up with their TV deal? Do you think it's going to be multiple platforms? That's going to be my guess. I think it's going to be not just Netflix, but other places too. What do you think of ESPN's coverage? For me personally, I don't watch a lot of their stuff. That doesn't mean I don't think they do a good job. I just like, there's nothing about the coverage that's like making me like needing to go to their YouTube channel or watch anything specifically, or even their interviews. Like, there's so many fighters doing interviews now that it's like, you know, you don't have to just only watch ESPN. You can get it anywhere else. Let me know about all that. Yeah, let's just have a discussion about this. I think it's an interesting topic, and I don't know how many people are covering it, but let me know in the comments. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.